Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So we're back with our second spec in our Beginner's Guide to Paladin series. Today we're going to be looking at the Retribution Paladin, the melee DPS spec for the Paladin class. So in this series, what we do is we take a look at the most notable items in the spellbook, so passives, offensive abilities, defensive abilities, utility. We then go into things like your talents, your basic rotation, and your legendaries, and also your stat priority as a Retribution Paladin. So that's what we're going to cover in this video to help you get started on your journey. If you're looking to start a Retribution Paladin and you don't know where to begin, hopefully this guide will be able to help you get started. So before we get into the video, as always guys, with YouTube videos, make sure that you always hit the subscribe button below. It's definitely helping me out. Something like 95 to 97% of the video views that I get on each individual video don't actually come from people that are subscribed to the channel. So hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, because I will be doing Holy Paladin coming soon. And I'm going to do a little bit of a throwback into some TBC Classic style videos as well. So be on the lookout for those coming over the next few couple of weeks, I imagine. So you can also follow my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/warx_BAA. I stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night from 9:30 p.m. to around midnight Central Standard Time US. I'm also multi-streaming onto YouTube as well, so if you prefer to follow me on YouTube, check out some of the streams I've done in the past. I'm continuing to do those moving forward into the future. All right, let's get into Retribution Paladin. Position. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is talk about the abilities that Retribution Paladin brings to the table. So the first one that we're going to be talking about here is your passive abilities. And the first one, and really the only two that we're going to talk about, is this one first, Art of War. So your auto attacks have a 24% chance to reset the cooldown on Blade of Justice. Blade of Justice, as you'll find out, is a big two-hander or two holy powers builder ability. So resetting that as much as humanly possible is going to be quite good. And then the only other passive to talk about is your mastery, which increases the holy damage that you do by a percentage. This is actually, I know it's very boring because it's just increased holy damage, but you're also the only DPS to do holy damage. So this is going to be a good way to increase the holy damage that you do, which actually takes up a lot of your spells. Most of your spells are actually holy damage, with your auto attacks being physical damage. You're very much a hybrid damage dealer. So those are really the only two passives that we got. So we're going to move into offensive abilities. Now the Paladin is a builder spender style spec, similar to kind of like Rogue with the combo points system. Here there's no energy resource that you have to manage. It's literally just your two holy power builders and then your holy power spenders. So that's how we're going to break down this section, is we're going to break it down into builders and then holy power spenders. So we're going to start with builders, and we're going to start with Blade of Justice, as we've already mentioned. So this actually has a 12-yard range, so there's gives you a little bit of room to use it maybe as you're going into a fight or coming back in from a mechanic. You have a little bit of range to start doing that damage just even 1 second earlier as you get back into melee range. But it pierces the enemy with a Blade of Light, dealing X amount of physical damage. Mine's around 1250 right now. Generates 2 holy power on an 11-second cooldown. This is hasted with your haste, so as you get more haste, this cooldown will continue to drop, and of course can be reset with Art of War. This is your biggest holy power generator that's on a fairly short cooldown. 2 holy power, nothing to scoff at. If you ever need 2 holy power and Wake of Ashes is not up, this is going to be the one that you're going to want to use, because it's just the most efficient ability for you. All right, next up is what I think is probably one of the most staple Paladin abilities, Judgment. So you deal single target damage, 885 at my stats, and causing them to take 25% increased damage from your next holy power ability. So using Judgment actually will empower your spenders. We'll talk about the spenders here in just a little bit. So always good to try and use this as much as possible before you would actually use a spender. Of course, don't overcap your holy power to do so. That would be silly, because you just waste the holy power that it generates. This has a 30-yard range, so much longer. Again, you can use it on the way into a fight. An 11-second cooldown, again, hasted as well, so kind of matches with Blade of Justice. So a couple of, you can see like you're just basically rotating your cooldowns at this point. That's kind of the way that Retribution Paladin plays in terms of building your holy power. Next up, Crusader Strike. This is the very basic builder. Let's see, Crusader Strike is here now. So you strike the target for 605 physical damage. You get it's a 5.5 second recharge at my stats right now. You have 1 holy power generated, 2 charges. So this is going to be a good way to generate some holy power on a fairly efficient, quick time frame. So you want to use this basically if there's nothing else available. You use Crusader Strike. All right, next up, Hammer of Wrath. As soon as I find it again here. Oh wait, it's not in the Paladin section again. Hammer of Wrath. This is your execute style ability. A 6.8 second cooldown hasted. So I think it's 8 seconds to start and then it goes down from there. You hurl a divine hammer that strikes an enemy for big holy damage, usable on enemies that have lower than 20% health or during your Avenging Wrath cooldown. This becomes the #1 priority when it is available for you to use because it hits so hard. You can see 1163 is definitely nothing to shake a stick at. Even at my very low eye level, I think I'm only like 142 on this character, so very low eye level, and it still hits pretty hard. So good ability. And then finally, an old favorite has come back, Wake of Ashes, a talent for the duration of Battle for Azeroth. It is now baseline for Retribution Paladins because it had like a 99% pick rate across the board for Paladins. Doesn't generate 5 holy power anymore, it only generates 3, but you do like a big front conal ability that does over 3,000 damage to all enemies within 12 yards in front of you. Reducing movement speed that's useful to know for kiting purposes. Damage gets reduced on secondary targets, which is fairly common for most conal style AoE abilities. They work off of a primary takes the biggest damage, and then all the secondary targets take a little bit less. If you hit demons or undead, so that's going to be pretty common in the Shadowlands, you're going to also stun them for 5 seconds, so a good CC tool as well, if you happen to have the right set of enemies. And it generates 3 holy power, so your biggest one. 45 second cooldown though, so you're not going to use this all that often compared to your other builders, but definitely one that if you need 3 holy power and it is up, you always want to use it. So those are your primary builders. Let's go look at your spenders. You only have 2. First one, Templar's Verdict. So it costs 3 holy power to use. You unleash a powerful strike that deals 1880 at my stats holy damage to an enemy target. So again, this is where that mastery comes into play. This is a single target one, only does it on 1 person. So if you're fighting 1 target, you're going to want to use Templar's Verdict as your primary spender. In AoE situations, you use Divine Storm. Whirl of Divine Energy, dealing 1300 holy damage to 5 enemies. This is target capped to 5, but 1300 damage to all of them. It's a pretty good AoE ability. 3 holy power to use it as well. So the spenders are very easy. If you're only fighting 1, maybe even 2 targets, you want to use Templar's Verdict. If you're fighting 3 or more targets, you want to use Divine Storm. So there's a couple of other offensive abilities that don't involve the holy power generation side. The first one that we're going to talk about is Consecration. So this has a 9-second cooldown, just causes damage over 12 seconds to enemies that enter the area. So this is good for AoE, even in sometimes single target if you're having gaps in your rotation, which ideally you don't, but you could lay Consecration down in AoE situations just to help your AoE damage. And the other one is a little bit weird because it's not exactly a defensive ability, but it's not exactly a true offensive ability, and that is Shield of Vengeance. So you basically pop this on a 2-minute cooldown. You absorb damage for 15 seconds. When the shield expires, it bursts to inflict holy damage equal to the amount absorbed, divided amongst all enemies. So if it absorbs nothing, it's going to be like a low shield. If you get beat on with this shield on, then it's going to hit pretty hard. I've definitely gotten in Battle for Azeroth. I remember getting hit for like 250k in PvP one time. It was really funny. Not for me so much, but for the people that were watching me, it was hilarious. So this one's kind of weird because it's both a defensive ability and an offensive ability. You basically want to pop this on cooldown because there's offensive benefit to doing so. If it just so happens to coincide with a major raid mechanic, then the bonus is yours. Extra damage coming out from you. So nothing but positive there. All right, let's move on to defensive abilities. First one is the Bubble, Divine Shield. We all know about the Bubble. Makes you immune for 8 seconds, gives you forbearance for 30 seconds. Gives you a DPS with an immunity, a melee DPS with an immunity. Even so is even more rare, so kind of a unique niche. You can definitely use this to do things like clear out the orbs on Hungering Destroyer, clear traps on Artificer Zymox. Gives you a little bit of utility to the raid as well. Next one, Blessing of Protection. Make you immune to physical damage for 10 seconds. Causes forbearance, so you can use this on yourself or on a teammate. If you have a teammate that pulled aggro, you bop them, they take no damage, allows your tank to get aggro back without any worries. Word of Glory. Word of Glory is a healing ability. Oh wait, it's here. So this one costs 3 holy power. You're not using this for damage, but you do heal a friendly target for, close to 4,000 at my stats. It's not bad at all, considering I only have just under 22,000 health, so that's, 7% of my health, if just baseline. So you can use this on yourself, on your teammates. If you're really in a tough situation, no other defenses are down, you don't have Flash of Light available to you, you can use Word of Glory with your 3 holy power, and that is going to allow you to be able to get a little bit of healing on yourself, or you could potentially use it to help save a tank, save a healer, give them a little bit of extra health, go from there. Ideally, you're not using this all that often, but it is available to you if you think you need it. And then finally, Flash of Light, your basic standard heal, short cast time, heals for a decent amount at 2800 at my stats. Just a good ability to use in between pulls. There is a talent that interacts with Flash of Light. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And we're going to touch on the utility, pretty similar to the Prop Paladin video, so definitely go make sure you check that one out, but I'll quickly touch on them here. Blessing of Freedom gives yourself immunity to movement of pairing effects for 8 seconds. Very good. 25-second cooldown. Want to use this anytime someone is snared. I think of Lady Darkbane and Castle Nathria, and more situations that I can even count inside Mythic Plus. So very good ability. Definitely have it spellbound somewhere where you can get it pretty easily. You want to use it on yourself or your teammates. We have Cleanse Toxins. Cleanse Toxins for Paladins, again, poison and disease effects you can remove, so you can help your healer out by, if they can't do a disease for any particular reason. I'm thinking something like Druid can only do curses and poisons, so if you have a disease effect comes up and your Druid can't cleanse it, you can then cleanse it in favor. So it just helps out your team a little bit to be able to cleanse something if they don't have poison. So I think Shamans don't have poison, so if you're running with a Shaman, you can cleanse toxins to help remove any poison effects that come through. Blessing of Sacrifice. So Blessing of Sacrifice is interesting. Basically, you take 30, reduces the damage taken by 30% on the target you cast it on, but you take 75% of the damage prevented. So you can use this in combination with Shield of Vengeance to goose up your Shield of Vengeance. It is a little bit of degenerate gameplay, so I don't recommend it if you're not really comfortable with what your damage intake is going to be. But if you are, you can use Shield of Vengeance, Blessing of Sacrifice the tank, goose up your shield, do big damage. So definitely some niche ability there. Hammer of Justice. We all know about the good old Hodge. Stun the target for 6 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown, 10-yard range. Use this to interrupt spellcasting. Think of Loyal Beasts, which is not interruptible through normal means, but can be stunned off. You can stop the Gargants from growing really big and giga-shotting your tank. Rebuke is your Paladin interrupt, so make sure you're using that in combination with maybe Hand of Justice or Hammer of Justice to give yourself 2 ways to interrupt spellcasting. And then of course Divine Steed is your mobility tool, so where you jump on your steed for baseline 3 seconds, increasing movement speed by 100, and you can use it indoors and in combat, so it gives you ability to do that. I have 2 charges on mine because I have Divine Steed talented, or was it Crusader? I have Crusader talented, so it gives me a 2nd charge. And there is a Finesse Conduit, Light Sparting, that increases the time that you're on this, so if you have that conduit at a fairly high level, we'll get into the talents here in just a little bit, that kind of shows that, Crusader is not necessarily maybe as necessary. Alright, so let's talk about stat priority before we get into talents. So the stat priority for Retribution Paladin really is eye level. Is going to be the most important thing, giving you as much strength as you can. Right. The other stats that you want to be looking into, haste is going to be really important for Retribution Paladin. Reduces cooldowns on Judgment, Blade of Justice in particular, but also increases your auto attack swings. And then all the other stats, so Mastery, Versatility, and Crit, they're all pretty close. So if you're aiming for specific pieces, I basically go haste. If it's higher eye level, take it. If it has haste, take it. And any other stat on there is pretty much fine. Obviously, you want to do something like sim yourself if you want to find out the true upgrade, but if you're just starting out and trying to get an idea of what stats do I want to prioritize, it's eye level above really anything else. And then if you have your choice of secondary stats, you want to do haste, and then any of the other 3. They're going to be perfectly fine. They all have different value, and there's a lot of different talent builds and stuff like that that you can run that maybe increase the value of one particular stat. All right. let's move into the talents. So Retribution talents, I think, are actually the best talent tree in Shadowlands for the classes that I've played. There is a ton of variety here, and not only does it depend on things like single target or AoE, but you also get different builds based on which covenant you choose. This mainly impacts Kyrian and Venthyr, so if you're a Necrolord or a Night Fae, first off, shoutouts, I don't see that many of you. Second off, your build is going to be a little bit more standard, because Kyrian with Divine Toll and Ashen Hollow for Venthyr are going to give you a little bit different sort of stat priority and ways that you want to build and design your characters. But let's talk about these talents. Let's clear these out. On the 15 row, we have Zeal. Judgment empowers you with Holy Zeal, causing your next 3 auto attacks to occur 30% faster and deal a little bit of holy damage. This is the best talent for AoE. There's not one that's great on this row for AoE, so this is just really kind of the best one. So if you're in big AoE situations or heavy AoE situations, just take Zeal, get those little extra bit of auto attack damage, and get a little bit of haste. It's going to be good in pretty much any situation. For single target, Templar's Verdict. This increases the damage of your next Templar's Verdict by 15% for 6 seconds. Every time you cast Templar's Verdict, it refreshes this ability. So this talent promotes a gameplay loop in pure single target of going in, Righteous Verdict, and you want to try to do as many Righteous Verdicts inside that 6-second window as you can to constantly refresh it and basically always have that 15% damage boost on your Righteous Verdicts. This is the best pure single target talent for Necrolords, Night Fae, and Venthyr. It's just excellent talent in general for single target, but if you're those, you definitely want to make sure you're picking this one for single target situations. Finally, Execution Sentence. This costs 3 holy power on a 1-minute cooldown. Basically, a hammer slowly falls from the sky. After 8 seconds, the target suffers big amounts of holy damage, plus 20% of the damage taken from your abilities during that time. If you are Kyrian, you want to use this. The reason for that is Divine Toll allows 5 judgments to be cast, and there is a conduit, I think, that allows you to have it cast on potentially 3 of them at the same time on one target. So Divine Toll is Judgment. Judgment does holy damage, so if you have Execution Sentence going, you hit 3 judgments that are all big single target hitters. That's going to just allow you to have this incredible burst window that is going to really help your overall DPS. So Execution Sentence, you basically want to use it when you have the cooldown available to you, and then you want to try to pump as much abilities into the target during that 8-second window, and then they explode. It's kind of a wonky version of Colossus Smash, where Colossus Smash, you basically debuff the target, and then everything that you do in that 8 or 10 second window, I think, is increased. This is kind of like a reverse version of that. You pick this, they deal, basically you activate this and you have an 8-second window to pump as much as you can inside that window, and then they take the 24 damage on my stats plus 20%. So if it did, 10,000 damage in that window, they're going to get another 2,000 damage on top of that. So you can see almost 5,000 damage in that window time frame for this ability. That's going to make it hit much harder than both of these other ones for Kyrians only. On the second row, Fires of Justice is okay. I don't necessarily like it myself. Reducing the cooldown of Crusader Strike was already 5.5 seconds at my stats, so reducing that even more just doesn't seem like it's got a big value. But it does does have a chance to make your next holy power abilities be only 2 holy power instead of 3. That has some value, allows you to get more spenders out there, but overall, I think this talent falls pretty far behind the other 2. It doesn't really work well in single target or AoE situations compared to the other ones. Blade of Wrath, Art of War resets the cooldown of Blade of Justice 100% more often, and increases the damage of Blade of Justice by 25% when you get those procs. This is a great single target ability, does pretty good in AoE as well, but mainly going to be used for single target. That way, anytime Art of War procs, if you need 2 holy power, you want to use Blade of Justice immediately, get that extra damage on the Art of War proc, and then hopefully you can continue to proc this more often. In AoE situations, you want to use Empyrean Power. This is an old Azerite trait from Battle for Azeroth Returned as a talent, though a little bit different. In BFA, if I recall correctly, it was like anytime you used an ability or a holy power spender, you had a chance to make Divine Storm free. So technically, you could chain these off of each other. Here, it's only Crusader Strike that has a chance to make your Divine Storm free and deal additional damage. The best target for heavy AoE. So you'll want to make sure that you're using Crusader Strike is a little bit more often. Normally it's like the last thing on your priority list. Here it'd probably be like the second or third behind Judgment, maybe even Blade of Justice, so that you can try to proc those free Divine Storms and be able to, get that big AoE damage going. On the 30 row, you can take whatever you want. Fist of Justice, probably not nearly as good. Every time you spend Holy Power, you get a reduction on Hammer of Justice. That's still not bad because it gets your stun up more often. But there's not a ton of reason to use this like there was in BFA. Like this was almost mandatory in BFA. The way the dungeons are set up, it's not going to be as necessary. And in raid situations, there's not a lot of use for Hammer of Justice anyways. This whole row is more about utility. Repentance basically gives you a 1 minute CC. This doesn't put you in combat if I recall correctly, so it can help you enable skips in Mythic Plus if you need it. But it is only usable against certain targets, obviously humanoids, demons, dragon, and giants. And then Blinding Light basically is a 1.5 minute cooldown that disorients all targets within 10 yards. And then any non-holy damage will break the disorient effect. So this is just good for CCing mobs off of you if you need to, or breaking spell casts so that you prevent maybe a nasty uninterruptible spell cast from going off. 35 row, Eye for an Eye, I don't really think has any use right now. It's not very good. You just reduce the physical damage by 35%, and you deal a little bit back to any melee attacks against you for this 10 seconds. It's not the best defensive cooldown because it's probably good for PvP, but even then I think the other two talents probably have a little bit more use. Cavalier, we've already mentioned, gives you a second Divine Steed charge. Again, this is good as you have lower ranks of the Light's Barding Conduit. If you have a higher rank of Light's Barding Conduit though, this talent may not be as necessary. And finally, Unbreakable Spirit reduces the cooldown of Divine Shield, Shield of Vengeance, and Lay on Hands by 30%. This is the one you definitely want to use for raiding, where your mobility won't be tested as much because you get that extra cooldown on Shield of Vengeance, taking it from a 2 minute cooldown to I think like 1 minute and 45 seconds or something like that. So it's a pretty good cooldown on an ability that you use fairly often offensively in Shield of Vengeance. So for raids, take this. If you feel like you need the mobility or you're doing a lot of open world, take Cavalier, and then Eye for an Eye, just avoid it. On the 40 row, Divine Purpose. Holy Power abilities have a 15% chance to make your next Holy Power ability free and deal 20% damage and healing. This is very good for chaining together stuff. So in combination with Empyrean Power, Divine Purpose, you can get a free Divine Storm, proc it, hit your Divine Storm off Empyrean Power, just get like 2 or 3 Divine Storms in a row. Can lead to some pretty strong AoE burst damage, but the stars do have to align. It is a little bit RNG, so something to think about. Holy Avenger triples your generation of Holy Power for 20 seconds on a 3 minute cooldown. This is a very strong burst offensive cooldown that you would want to use in conjunction, say, with Avenging Wrath. But overall, I don't think that this is an ability that you should really target that much. And then there's Seraphim, another 3 Holy Power spender on a 45-second cooldown. Basically, for 15 seconds, you get increased haste, crit, and versatility, and then increased mastery as well on a little bit of a higher percent. This is a very good one if you're Kyrian. You definitely want to be taking this because, again, boosting your mastery, boosting that holy damage, has good synergies with execution sentence as a result. But even for all other specs, unless you just really you really only like having 2 abilities for finishers, I always recommend taking Seraphim because it gives you those extra stats, which are always going to be good and useful to you. So Seraphim is probably the talent you want to take in all situations. Divine Purpose is a good general backup if you don't like having another button to press. Holy Avenger I don't think is very good right now. On the 45 road, Justicar's Vengeance is not good. This talent needs to be scrapped. But don't pick it. Please don't pick it. Healing Hands. The cooldown of Lay on Hands is reduced by 60% based on the target's missing health. So when you lay on hands someone that's very low, say like you have a tank that's down to like 5 HP, you burst Lay on Hands on him. That's going to help reduce the cooldown of Lay on Hands from 10 minutes down to like 6 minutes. Still probably only going to use it once a fight, but if you have it up a little bit sooner, say in between pulls, may be useful. It's very niche, but in the situations that it's going to shine, it'll shine brightly, but those situations are fairly few and far between. Selfless Healer is probably the one you're going to pick pretty much all the time. When you spend Holy Power abilities, you get a stacking buff on yourself that reduces the cast time of Flash of Light by 25%. It increases the healing that it does by 10%, stacking up to 4 times. So do the quick math, you can make Flash of Light a quick self-cast heal on you, so a good way to keep yourself sustained in the middle of a fight. On the 50 row, Final Reckoning is really good for Kyrian. So this is again another 1 minute cooldown, so it lines up with Seraphim, lines up with Execution Sentence mostly. Basically, when you don't have Final Reckoning, when Final Reckoning is off cooldown, you basically have a chance to call down a bolt dealing extra holy damage and then taking 10% increased ability from your next holy power ability. So has some single target and AoE situation. In AoE, obviously you can see it calls down a blast of holy energy, 24 holy damage to all targets in the area, causing them to take 50% increased damage from your holy power abilities for 8 seconds. So you can see that there's an 8-second window there, 8-second window with Execution Sentence. You see there's synergy there. Just going to really become like massive burst windows. It's why you see in PvP in particular, a lot of Paladins are playing Kyrian right now, because they can combine Final Reckoning, Execution Sentence, Divine Toll into some really big monstrous burst damage. It just really helps out quite a bit. Sanctified Wrath. Avenging Wrath lasts 25% longer, and then each holy power that you spend causes you to explode 262 damage to nearby enemies. This is the best AoE talent for non-Kyrian. You want to use Sanctified Wrath, just make sure your wings a little bit longer. I think it goes from 25 to 30 seconds, so it makes it a little bit longer, and then also giving you that little bit of AoE Holy Light damage on Holy Power Spenders, so a little bit of extra damage in AoE situations is never a bad thing. Now, if you're Venthyr, you want to choose Crusade, which replaces Avenging Wrath. Call upon the light, begin a crusade, increasing your damage done in haste by 3% for 25 seconds. Each holy power spent during crusade increases the damage done in haste by an additional 3%, stacking up to 10 times. And yes, that does stack 3 at a time when you use holy power spenders, so it doesn't take that long to stack this up. The reason that you want to do this is that it also allows you to use, you get more haste, which reduces the cooldown on Hammer of Wrath. So you get extra uses of Hammer of Wrath out, extra haste, which is going to reduce that cooldown, in conjunction with things like Ashen Hollow, is going to make this just a really potent combination. Alright, so let's talk about your standard single target build. For standard single target build, you're looking at it. Maybe you switch to Unbreakable Spirit for raid situations, Cavalier for open world, but this is the single target build if you are not Kyrian. If you're not Kyrian or not Venthyr, this is your standard. So if you're Necrolord or Night Fae, this is your single target build. If you're Venthyr, you switch to Crusade. And if you are Kyrian, you want to go Final Reckoning, Seraphim, Execution Sentence. Those are the big 3 that you want to go with. This build for Kyrian doesn't change even for AoE. For Venthyr, you go back to Crusade and switch to Zeal. Other than that, pretty much the same. And then for Necrolords and Night Fae, Sanctified Wrath with Zeal, Empyrean Power for everyone as well. So those are the talent builds for Holy Paladin. So I'm going to go into my single target build here, as I am Venthyr, and we're going to come here to this little Dungeoneer's training dummy. So what's the rotation for Retribution Paladin? So on pull, usually you're going to want to lead with Judgment. You're going to come in, use this, then maybe you go Crusader Strike to get up to 5, and then go from there. You can see Art of War procs. So we're going to do that, and then another Crusader Strike, wipe that out, and then Wake of Ashes, wipe that out, Judgment here, wipe that out. And you can see right here I've got 4 procs, so boom. You can see Flash of Light is free. And this is basically what you're doing. You want to prioritize Blade of Judgment. You can try to lay Consecration, which I have on this button. So you can see here I got boom. You're going to want to use, make sure you're using Seraphim when you have it up. What did I put Seraphim on? Key 1. You can see here I got some pretty good stats here. Go 8%. Boom here. Go back into Judgment. Crusader Strike. Holy Power. Blade of Justice comes off. Back into this. Boom, boom. You can see there. Pretty straightforward. In AoE situations, let's make sure all my cooldowns are up. So as you can see, you basically try to prioritize Blade of Justice and Judgment. On my weak aura here, it's these 2. Use Crusader Strike to fill the gaps, and you can use Consecration basically on cooldown. And then you would want to pop your Crusade, Ashen Hollow, those types of things you want to pop on cooldown, but Covenant abilities, they vary depending on which one you choose, but essentially you pop them on cooldown. I just didn't do that here. Now let's go to AoE situations. So we're going to come here to this cleave training. So here you want to come in and lead in. You actually want to lead off with Ashen Hollow, drop Consecration, Blade of Justice, Divine Storm. Come here, we'll pop Seraphim to get things going there. You can see I get that. And then you come back in, Divine Storm, Crusader Strike, and you see how there's a little bit of downtime here. Luckily we got a proc, Judgment, Divine Storm. You can see I'm doing pretty solid damage here, even though I'm taking it kind of slow. You know, you drop this back down, hit the heal on yourself, and then boom, go from there. So that's kind of the basic rotation for AoE situations. Basically, again, are just trying to maximize building your holy power up to 5 as much as possible, and then using whatever finisher is appropriate. Seraphim on cooldown is always the first priority. If it's available, you want to use it. If it's not available, then you move on to either Templar's Verdict or Divine Storm, depending on single target or AoE situation. So it's a very straightforward build. It takes a little bit of time. It takes very little time to get used to. It's just a matter of prioritizing your builders. That's the big part. So in terms of priorities, in terms of rotation, in terms of what builders you always prioritize, Wake of Ashes is always first. Hammer of Wrath is always going to be second. Blade of Justice, Judgment, Crusader Strike, and then Consecration going down if none of those other things are available for you to use. So you saw I had that gap of downtime in the AoE situation. That's where I would have been dropping Consecration again. Alright. And then of course you would want to use Crusade on cooldown. I didn't use it there, but make sure you're always using that on cooldown if you can. And finally, we're going to talk legendaries. So Retribution Paladin has a few different legendaries that you want to take a look at. If you are Kyrian, you want to use Magistrate's Judgment. Judgment has a 75% chance to reduce the cost of your next Holy Power Spender by 1. This affects Final Reckoning, Execution Sentence, Seraphim, and then your 2 main ones as well. So a lot of ways to help reduce your Holy Power Spender a little bit, give you that little bit of spare Holy Power to be able to get back into the fray of using the next Holy Power Spender. So definitely want to use this. This is in pretty much all pure single target situations for Kyrian. You can definitely go this route. For Venthyr, you want to look mostly at the Mad Paragon. So Hammer of Wrath becomes a big part of your deal if you're Venthyr, so getting more damage on Hammer of Wrath and extends the duration of Crusade by an additional second is all going to be very good. Very, very good for that. So this is good again for mainly for single target, but also good on AoE, and also very easy to get. You get it out of the Great Vault. Magistrate Judgment comes out of Theater of Pain. So these are ones that you can easily grind to go get. For those of you that are not looking at these two in particular, Final Verdict got buffed. This drops off of Valinor, the world boss for Bastion. So again, you may have to wait depending on the world boss rotation that you're on, but one that you can definitely go get. It replaces Templar's Verdict with Final Verdict that deals big holy damage and has a 15% chance to activate Hammer of Wrath and reset the cooldown. So this one's very good in pure single target situations since it only replaces Templar's Verdict. So if there's going to be a second mob at any time, then you're not going to want this. So something kind of thinking pure single target, Hungering Destroyer, Artificer Zymox, Sledge Fist. These are going to be fights in the raid that Castlanathria, that Final Verdict is going to be very good. In all AoE situations, you want to look at Tempest of the Lightbringer. Divine Storm's projection, additional wave of light striking all enemies up to 20 yards in front of you for 20% of Divine Storm's damage. This drops from Orphereon, who's in the Spires of Ascension. And so this is going to be good, obviously, for AoE. Getting extra damage off of the Divine Storms that you cast is always good. Because it does move out 20 yards in front of you, you do have to be careful if you're close to potentially another pack. You could accidentally pull that other pack. So you do have to be aware of your positioning, but as long as you keep that aware, this is going to be a very strong legendary for you from the perspective of AoE situations. So that's the Retribution Paladin guide, guys. I hope that was very helpful to you. Definitely go back and rewind and rewatch things that you need to take a look at. Again, I didn't touch on Covenants, Conduits, or Soulbinds. We'll do that in a future video because I try to keep these videos as much as possible under 30 minutes. This one did not achieve that goal. This one's going to be around 35. So I'm not going to hold you up anymore from your days, so we'll do Holy Paladin next, and then we'll get into the Covenant Condos and Soulbind videos for all 3 specs. I'm also going to be working on some TBC Classics tier lists, so be on the lookout for those videos coming soon. So until then, everyone, I hope you all stay safe, I hope you all wear your mask, and I will see you all next time.